Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. Today we are doing a step-by-step acrylic painting tutorial of this one called Summertime Memories. I'll take you through from start to finish. We'll talk about brushes, canvas, paint, all that kind of stuff as we go through. If you haven't checked out my other step-by-step tutorials, I encourage you to do so. I'll link that playlist below. Let's jump right into this one. Okay, welcome again to this tutorial. As you can see here, I've got my canvas drawn out a little bit. If you're interested in these measurements, I can show you here real quick. Our tree line, the top of our tree line, the further trees are going to be about 3 inches down. And again, this is on a 12 by 12 canvas. Our shoreline is close to 4 3/4 there, all the way across. And then the top of our dock is about 4 inches up and 2 1/4 inches over, 2 3/4 inches on this side. Bottom here, we're looking at 2 inches over, 1 1/4 inches over, and then on the bottom here we're starting 3 1/2 over and 3 1/4 here. I'll make sure that I post a link to a picture of it so that you can have an idea of proportions if you weren't able to follow that. But a lot of what we're following here is similar to the rule of thirds. Okay, so we're going to be using Liquitex Basics paint here. I've used them for all of my recent tutorials and will continue to use Liquitex Basics. I use them for all the paint by number kits that I make, and I just have found that they're a good quality paint for the price. You're not breaking the bank, but you're still getting a good quality paint. This is my non-stick palette. Been using it for about 7 years. Paint just scrapes off afterwards. Gets a little stained sometimes, but it's been great for the last 7 years. And I'll be using some Tri-Art brush as well here, and a Fumui brush. And if you want to check those out, I have reviewed these as well. Decent pack on Amazon. So with the landscape painting, if you've never painted a landscape before, thank you for joining this one. We are going to start with the background and work our way to the foreground. This, especially with landscapes, it's easier to do something behind and then layer over top of it to create that smooth transition instead of trying to paint around things. And then, yeah, we're going to work our way to our foreground and put our subjects right here close to the middle there as well. I'm excited for this one and how it's going to turn out. So we're going to start with our sunset sky. Just going to use a nice big brush because we're going to be trying to cover a lot of area. We're not too worried about detail here. Skies, especially like this, they're a little bit more free-flowing. If you really want to work on trying to add clouds in certain spots, you can, but we're just going to go more with the flow here and kind of see where that takes us. So for the sky, we are going to be using kind of some yellows and pinks and purples for this nice sunset sky. So I'm going to be using some rose pink, some Naples Yellow Hue, probably a little bit of this yellow oxide in here, just a deeper yellow. Definitely be using some titanium white and some deep violet. So this is a warmer purple, and that's what I want. As you get to the top of the sky, you might want a little bit of blue in there if you want. So you could add like some ultramarine blue, some cobalt blue. I don't have ultramarine in Liquitex Basics here at the moment, actually. So I might just throw a little bit of cobalt blue in the top there. We'll see, kind of see how I'm feeling when we get there. Now, yeah, let's actually do that. Let's start with some cobalt blue here. I'm going to put a little bit down here on the palette. And I'm going to just load up my brush a little bit. And I'm just going to start with some nice wide brush strokes. And I'm just planning to fill this top area here. And that's honestly about it. That's all I really want to do with this one. Now I'm going to take some of this deep violet. And this, I'm not going to clean off the brush, and I'm going to go right in. And you can see they're blending together right away. So I'm starting below where the blues are, and as it picks it up, then I'm going to work my way back up into those blues a little bit. And that's blending it right into it, creating a nice smooth transition. Excuse me. I'm going to add a bit more to that in just a moment here. I just want to make sure that I'm I'm keeping with the right idea here. Knock that right over. And that's darkening up that blue as well, which is something that I wanted. Now I'm going to take some of this rose pink. Now the lighter we get in colors, the less powerful the colors are as well. So this pink is going to be tainted very easily by the purple, which is fine. You just need to be aware of that. But I'm working my way back up again into it, as you can see, and working my way back down. These are going to be some pretty quick transitions between some colors here. If you want to add some smaller transitions, turn your brush sideways, and then I just like to brush those out a little bit as well. Okay, now I'm going to take some of this yellow oxide. And I am just going to wipe off my brush. I'm not going to rinse it or anything, just wipe it off. I use old clothes just cut up for my rags. I'm going to get some of this on the brush. I'm going to add a little bit up in here. So I'm turning the brush more sideways here, just to get a few streaks of this a little bit higher up. And just brushing it out. Now we'll take a little bit of this Naples Yellow. You could just add white to the yellow oxide. I just have this on hand, and so that's why I'm using it. Just wiping off that brush again. Take some of this. And lastly, I'm going to take, excuse me, got a frog in my throat tonight. Take some of this white here. I didn't wipe off my brush, and that's fine. This white's just going to be the last layer here, really highlighting where that sun's going to be. And I'm going to work up a few lighter highlights up throughout. If you feel like any part is too dark, like the top is too dark, you can always go back in with some of this pink and just add some of this pink a little bit higher up in and blend that throughout. And the last little bit that we want to do on the sky here is with a smaller brush. I'm going to take some of this white and add in our sun circle right here. And now around this, I'm just going to do little swirls with that white. And brush out from that spot a little bit with some of this white, just so it shows that it's a little bit lighter in that spot. Just going to add a few lighter highlights. Okay, this little brush I'm going to clean off for now. We're going to use it again later, but not at this moment. For water, I like using mason jars because then they have a lid. It's easy to keep them so they don't spill anywhere. Okay, I'm going to clean off this 1-inch brush as well here. I'll use it again when we get into the reflection of these trees here and stuff, but for now I don't need it. Okay, so now we're going to move into the background trees. And so for the background trees, if you've ever looked in at a landscape, the further away the trees are, the more blue of a tinge they get to it, even in the evenings. And so we're going to use more of a blue-green. This is a green deep permanent. It has more of a cooler tone to it compared to our Hooker's Green Hue permanent, which we will use later on some of the closer trees. But we're going to use this green deep permanent first on the further away trees. So I'm going to put some of this down on my palette here. Actually, I'm going to put a little bit there and a little bit there as well. And the first little bit here, I'm going to mix with a little bit of black. And the second bit there, I'm going to be mixing with some white. So I'm going to use a palette knife here. Got a whole cup of them up here. So I'm going to take just a little bit of black. Black is pretty powerful, so you got to be careful with it. And with that, I'm also going to add just a little bit of white. And that white is just going to help tone it down, so it's not, so it looks a bit more faded or foggy. Wow. Sorry, everybody. On this middle one, I'm just adding a bit more white to it and mixing it in with that brown, or with that green. I still think it's a bit too bright, so I'm going to add a bit more white and just a tiny bit more black to it. Again, I'm just toning it down. And to this last one, I'm adding all that white there to it. And add a little bit of black. Just toning that down so it's not so bright. I feel like I need a little bit more white out here for it. There we go, that's nice. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more here. I just feel like I don't have enough paint for this darker here. There we go. Wonderful. Okay. And for these trees, I'm going to use a fan brush. Now, maybe I'll use this one. Maybe I'll use a smaller one. I brought a couple out. And so I'm going to start with the darker here, and even get just a bit of black in there as well. And with this, I'm going to keep my brush kind of up like this. Well, actually, I could probably go like this for a little bit of it. And I'm just going in here, as you can see, and dabbing in a base layer of these trees. I feel like I need a bit more black in some of this. Need some darker spots in there. Now we're not going all the way across because the other trees that are going to be closer to us are going to be covering up the majority of that well, they're going to be covering up all the rest of that, and so we don't need to worry about going in with this and doing that whole thing. That would be a waste of our time. It's all about efficiency too, right? I'm just going far enough in that I know it'll be covered for sure. Okay, so I'm going to take the brush now, and I am going to turn it like this, but I'm going to tilt it forward as well, and that's going to create just very, very small vertical lines here, and that's what I'm going for these trees that are on top. That's what we want to see through there, and we want to make sure that we overlap with the sky completely, right? We don't want to leave space in between where that sky is and where our trees are. Just going to get some more black right on there. Okay, now I'm going to take this lighter middle color, go in and do the same idea here. And we'll take the lighter and do that same idea. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of this pink on my brush, mix it in there a little bit, and I'm going to add this in kind of right in here where that sun is, just to really show that that's where the sun is reflecting off of. A little bit of yellow in there as well. Just to show that's where that sun's coming through. Okay. I'm just going to rinse this off quick. Probably will come back to using it though. So now as we move into our trees that are closer to us, we're going to use more of a warmer green. So I'm going to use this Hooker's Green Hue Permanent. I don't want to leave it just as is. It's too warm as it is. I'm still going to tint it down with some white. And I'll probably even end up using some of this extra green that I have here. So I'm going to put some of this down there, there, and there. Going for 3 main choices again. Kind of a darker, a medium, and a lighter. For the darker, because I'm trying to cool it down a little bit, I'm not going to use a brown to darken it up. Oftentimes, if I just want a darker, super warm one, I would use brown. I'm going to use some black there to darken that up. And for the other two here, I do want to use some of this yellow to tone it down a little bit and keep it slightly warm, but then I will use some white as well at the same time. So that yellow is going to keep it warm, not cool it down too much, but then the white will just help tone that down. So this one, I'm just going to add this black in here. And I still had some of this stuff on this palette knife, and that's what I wanted. I'm going to add even a little bit more to it. I want it to be warm, but not too warm. So that's turning into a nice dark green for me. So now for our middle, I'm going to take some of this yellow oxide and mix that in here. So again, that's keeping it warm, but it's just toning it down a bit. I'm going to add a hint of white to this as well. And a little bit of this lighter green, a bit more even. I feel like I can handle it. All right, now for this last one, we're going to add a lot more white. That's toning it down. I'm going to add some of this deep green, lighter stuff that I've mixed up from earlier. Even more of it and even more white. It just needs to tone right down. Take a little bit of this black in there. I feel like that's a nice color, but I could use a bit more of this white in there. It just has too much green left in it. Just toning off that green. Okay. So I think I'll come back to using this fan brush a little bit here. And what I want to do first with some black. Actually, no, I lied. I'm going to use the black in a moment here, but not first. I'll use it. I'll use it a little bit later here. I'm going to take this darker green, and first I want to just create and some black. I just want to create a dark background that these trees are going to be going over here. So I'm going to go right into there, and I'm just going to be covering up most of this white space here with this really, really, really dark green that's mixed with this black. I'm just going to go up to this horizon line there, but I'm not going to go into it that much, maybe just a little bit in a couple of spots, but overall we're going to worry about that in just a moment here. That's as far as I want that to go in. I'm going to get some more here to do the same on this side. And you don't really need to dab this stuff in, it's just creating a little bit more texture for me. More so this is just filling in, right? And again, I'm just going to go up in a couple of spots here. Okay, I'm going to just wipe this off. Just because it has really dark on it. So now I'm going to take this dark brown here. Dark brown. Dark green. Just the dark green. And I'm just going to dab a little bit of this up in a couple of spots and down a little bit as well. These are going to be some of those taller trees in the background that are showing through. And I'm just helping it kind of avoid having a perfectly straight line for the top of the trees here, right? I'll add a few that are really, really tall. This is just adding in some depth in behind the trees that are going to be in the foreground. So same thing on this side. Just adding a few spots that are going to be filling in that background. I'm just deciding how detailed I want these trees to be right up front. I'm going to take just this medium and just dab this in a little bit throughout a couple of spots. Again, not super detailed anywhere. Just add it in there. Okay, I'm going to rinse this one off. I'm going to take a small angular brush. You could use a small round brush for this as well, actually. I just often use angled brushes. I'm going to take some of this medium green here, and right here I'm just going to be creating like little swoops downwards, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth to create the look of pine trees. And so the top of this one's going to be right up in here. And again, I'm just doing little swoops. Once we get down into here, it's not going to be quite as visible right away. And that's okay. I'm not worried. I'm going to go right down to where, it's going to be right on the shoreline there, this tree. And this one itself, I'm going to take some of this lighter now, especially to do on the side that's facing the tree. It's facing the sun, sorry, I'm losing my mind here. And I will take some darker in there just to add a little bit of contrast to what's going on around it. That's going to be one of those trees. Okay. Now I'm going to slide things over. Just going to take some light here. We're going to do another one, maybe a little bit taller. Ooh, careful where you put your finger. Right over here. Get some of this medium on my brush here. And get some of the dark on my brush here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do this throughout this shoreline and this shoreline. I'll do a little time lapse here so you don't have to watch me do this whole thing. But that's my plan here, is just to add a few of these trees throughout both shorelines. And this is just adding more detail. And again, it makes them appear closer to from what they actually are. I'm going to try just a small round brush here, see if it's any different. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to do for the trees here is, I think I will use a palette knife for it. I'm going to take a little bit of this white mixed in with some raw umber. You can use any type of brown if you want. And I'm just going to scrape in here a few tree trunks. The reason I'm using white as well is just so it's a bit more of a reflection. And by doing it this way, I find that it automatically kind of creates a bit of a staggered tree trunk idea. Add a little bit of black in there as well. May as well. Just wipe that off. Okay, now we're going to move into our lake. Now, reflections are fun. You don't always have to do a reflection, but we're gonna do a little bit of a reflection on this one. So we're gonna use a lot of the same colors that we have been using here, plus a few other ones as well. So because I kind of used up most of the purples and pinks there, I am gonna add a little bit more of these to our palette, just so I have these to work with as we're going through. Where am I here? I'll put a deep violet in here. And then same with these. Oh, that was not very good. Look at that. Nice. Jeez. Some of this one here, we lost all these greens that we were using there, so I'm going to add a little bit, probably in 2 spots actually. We'll add some more back in there. I'll get another little. We'll wipe that off. And same with our Naples Yellow Hue. We're out of. And our yellow oxide. Right, we got a bit of there. These greens that we were just working with were fine for. So I'm going to take some of this black, mix it in. This had quite a bit of that light green still on it, which is fine. We will need a little bit more black to get those really darks in there. Now I'm going to teach you a way to do a reflection that makes, it's not going to be a perfect reflection. This is going to be slightly different. This is often how I like to do reflections, because you're not trying to do an exact replica of what you're doing, but it still definitely creates the sense of a reflection, which is totally what we are going for here. So when we're creating reflections, they're going to be slightly, often slightly less saturated. They're not going to be quite as bright of colors. Sometimes this is going to happen by mixing in little bits of blue in there as well, or turquoise. I do have like a turquoise blue and a bright aqua green. I'm going to be mixing in a little bit, just a little bit of these kind of as we go. Not a whole lot. You don't necessarily need to have them. We're going to tone things down with some Payne's gray or white or black to just kind of simmer things out here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fan brush that I was using, and all I'm going to do to start is actually I do need a little bit more of this darker green here. So I'm going to take a dried piece there. And I will get some more black to go with it. And it's fine that I have this other stuff on it. I'm not too worried about that. So we're just going for a nice, that's perfect actually. Okay, so we got that nice dark green in there. Okay, so I'm going to take this darker green that we were mixing in here. And again, I'm just going to create a background like we did before. This is going to go right up to these trees. We don't want white spaces, or if you do have some, we can add more of a shoreline later. Okay, and we're going to do that same thing on this side. Now what I'm going to do is, with the lighter greens, I'm going to just, actually I want dark greens a little bit higher. Sorry, I want this dark green to be just a bit higher on both sides as well. Okay, so I'm going to take this medium green and I'm going to just dab in a little bit like this where the closer pine trees are. Okay, so I'm just dabbing in where the closer pine trees are. If you really wanted to take the time, you could go in with the round brush again or your angular brush and do those little brush strokes. I'm going to take this lighter green now. Okay. Now in the middle, I'm taking some of this darker green, the blue green that we had with some white, a bit more of the dark. And I'm just spreading this in left to right. I can dab some of this in. Let's take some of this more in here. Bit more of this black. Okay, now with this brush, I'm going to wipe it off first. It's got quite a bit of paint on it. So now with this brush, yeah, we can do it right now. I'm just going to go left to right over the part that needs to be reflected. And you can see the nice reflection blur that creates. The harder you press, the harder the blur. The lighter you press, the less the blur. So now as we move our way up into our sky, take a little bit of white. You might want to rinse this off just because we had a lot of green on there. Took a little bit of white. Let's take some of this yellow oxide, and I'm just going to get some of this in here first. Sorry, this isn't the yellow oxide. This is the Naples Yellow. I'm just slightly going around the green for a moment, and then we'll blend it in like we did the rest. But I just don't want to get a lot of green on my brush yet. Then I'm going to take some of the darker yellow. This stuff you can more just brush right in right away. I just wanted to get those two in. Take a bit more of the light. Take a bit of the white. And now again, just go across. And you got to do it fairly fast, otherwise things are going to start to dry up on you. And that's not always fun to deal with. Okay, now because I don't want any more green on my brush, again, I'm going to rinse that off. Dry it off a bit. Now I can take some of this pink that I flattened, and I'm going to need more. That's funny. And at this point, I want to just tone it down a bit. It's just a little bright. So I'm just going to add some whites to it here. And maybe even a little... no, that's fine. I want the colors to still be bright. Or, yeah, not quite saturated out. But I'm not going to add blues or anything to it. I don't want the pink to change. I still want it to be pink. It just doesn't need to be quite so bright of a pink. Then I can take a little bit of this darker purple, with the white still, of course. And then as we get closer to the bottom here, I'm actually going to use a Payne's Gray first to kind of see how this goes. Let's get a little bit of this out here. No, we got to put some of this. I'm going to add some Cerulean Blue to it. Yeah, I'm just going to add a little bit of Cerulean Blue out here. Mixed in with this Payne's Gray. We're just going to get a nice deep blue back here. And yeah, I'm going over where I drew earlier, but that's completely fine. I feel like I need a little bit more white. Just to tone it down. Now we're going to do the same on this side. Okay, and I think that is good for now for the reflection. So again, that was not at all like an exact reflection, a mirror image, but that's how you can do a reflection that still has all the same colors as your sky and what's above that, but then you're not worrying about all those little details. It's just a nice gradual transition and you're good. Okay, what I want to do now is I do want to block in just the dock. Just have that blocked in nicely. And to do that, I'm just going to use some raw umber and some black. That's all I'm going to use for it. To do this, I'm going to use just like an angular brush here. And so for the parts of the dock that are going to be lighter color, I'm just going to block it in with a little bit of a mixture here of black and raw umber. And if you wanted to, you could wait for the other layers to dry. I'm probably going to take a break after I block this in. So this part that's like underneath, I'm going to use more black because it's going to be pretty much black once we're done with it anyways. And that'll help me distinguish between what's above and what's on the side here. Okay, that's blocked in all it needs to be. I'm going to take a break now, and when we come back we'll add some details onto our dock, add a few things around it to make more of that reflection of the dock as well, and then we'll add our little characters in the front there. Okay, I'm going to go in here using just a flat brush, and we're going to add in some more details on the dock here. For the dock, I'm going to use some Naples Yellow Hue, I'll use some burnt umber, I'll use some white to kind of work my way through this. I'll add it down here so you can see it. So I'm just going to take some burnt umber here. This is dry now. Just going to take the little piece of hair off there. Just mix some of this in. This is just giving us a nice light brown. I feel like it might be a little bit too brown, just too saturated of a color. So I'm just going to get some black and some white out here that I can use. Oh, this one's a mess. I don't know what's been, this one's just never been clean. I don't know why. That one's fine. I'm going to leave this as it is. Well, no, that's actually not entirely true. I just told you it was a little bit too brown. So I'm just going to get a little bit of black and a little bit of white just to mute that color down a little bit. Now I'm going to add to this and grab a little bit of black to this as well. Maybe a little bit more. That's a good color there. I like that. Now I'm going to take some of this Naples yellow and just with what's left on here, just mix this in. Plus a little bit of black, plus some white. And I feel like I just need one more tone of colors here. Alright, so I'm going to take this and we are going to somewhat do some planks, but I'm going to go in later and add the fine lines between the planks with my palette knife, kind of like we did with the tree trunks up there. And so to start, I'm just going to take this, and here's where you want your brush strokes to be in the direction that we're going here. Then I'm going to take a little bit of another color and just on top of that, just add it in. Then I'm going to move up a little bit. grab some of another color. And you're going to just keep on doing that all the way down to the front. Obviously, the closer you get to the front, the smaller we do want our planks to look and to appear. But again, we can finalize that afterwards once we add in the tiny little lines. So focus throughout here as you're going through, just making sure that your brush strokes are horizontal, and just adding the various colors throughout, because that's what's going to make it look more like wood. Okay, now I'm going to go in and do the same idea with the top of the dock here as well. And I feel like the top of the dock could be a little bit lighter because that's where some sun is definitely going to be. So I'm just going to take some of this pure Naples Yellow here and just brush it out onto it here. Once you have that done, to do the underneath part, we want it to be darker for sure. So I'm just going to wipe this off here. And I'm just going to take the dark brown and add a layer of this dark brown right underneath. Take a little bit of black. Just to make sure it's a defined line there. And right at the bottom, make sure it's, well, I'm going to make sure it's black here. Or really, really dark brown, I guess. We're going to do a bit of a reflection underneath of this in just a moment here. Okay, I'm going to just be done with this one for a moment here. So I'm just going to rinse it off just so it doesn't dry out on me. Now I'm going to get some, nope, I need, where was it? Some of this black, a bit more. I'm going to mix this black in with just these colors that I have on my palette knife. It's just some of these browns that I've been working with, just so it's not straight black, but it's going to be pretty dark, which is what we want. Just going to gather it into more of a line shape here, so I can take this palette knife. Got some on my palette knife here. And now I'm going to use this to go across and create the lines for the planks. Now this is just going to be made of a random wood, right? So it's not going to be perfectly distanced or anything. At least that's what I'm saying. You can say whatever you like. The important thing is as we get closer to the end of the dock here, that our lines do get a bit closer together, because that's just going to help show a little bit of distance there for us. Now I'm going to do that same thing, but I'm going to just mix a little bit more of this darker brown into it. Sorry, just got a frog in my throat today. I did the other day too. And now we're going to do the same thing on the top of the dock here. Again, the further back piece will be further apart. And the closer you get to the front of the dock, the closer together we want these to be. And I'm going to do one kind of this way. Okay, I'm just going to wipe that off. I feel like in a certain spot here, too much black got out, so I'm just going to add a bit of this over top here. Perfect. All right, that's what I'm going to leave the dock at this point. I'm going to go in now and add a little bit of a reflection in here, and that's going to really just give us a bit more depth into what we're doing here. So to do that, I'm going to use this brush. I'm going to get out what color of purple was I using here? We'll use some of this deep violet in here. I'm going to use some Payne's Gray. We got some black and some white. So I'm going to take some of this Payne's Gray out, mix a little bit of this purple in with it as well. A hint of white just to lighten that up a hair. And also a hint of brown. And I'm just going to go in with this here underneath of the dock. Brushed it in over top of what I already had, and then I'm just going to go underneath here as well. And just brush it out a little bit. Same thing on this side. a bit more Payne's gray into there. And excuse me, I'm going to take a little bit of Cerulean Blue. I know we haven't used that for a while. But what I'm going to do with this is just mix a little bit of this in here so it's just a darker blue. And just down here, just in a few spots, just adding a little bit of kind of a ripple coming away from the dock. And that's just going to help create a bit more dimension to what we have going on down here close to our dock. Okay, and that's just making a lot more three-dimensional. If you haven't noticed already, that's really making it stand out compared to what it was before. It's amazing what a few little details can, not even really intense details, just a few little additions can really make to what's going on. Alright, and with that, we're going to move into our centerpieces here, our dog and our little kid. So to do this first, you might want to let this dry. It's pretty dry right here in the middle. If you have any clumps in there, it might not be perfectly dry yet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and sketch first, just with a pencil. And so I'm just going to sketch out where I want them to be, and then I'll come back and we can paint them in. Okay, so I just took a pencil, I went in and sketched. You can sketch however you like. I know this isn't the best, necessarily giving you step-by-steps for that. You can use this as a reference, or you can put your own dog on there. You can, instead of putting a boy standing there, you could put something else. If you're interested in measurements, the dog is about 1.5 inches tall by about 1/2 inch wide. The boy that I'm doing is about 3¼ inches tall. His torso is his torso is a little over 1/2 inch, but with the arms there, closer to 1 inch. His head is about 1/2 inch wide. His legs are about 1 inch tall. They're shorts 1/2 inch, if you're interested in doing the same measurements as me. So I'm going to start with the dog. Dog's the easy one. The dog's pretty much all black. We're going to add little hints of some of this darker brown in there, but really to start, I'm just going to fill it in here with this black, and I'll go in afterwards and add some highlights in its body. Okay, there's that. I'm going to take some of this darker brown here that we had, add a little bit of this up on the legs a little bit, and moving out for the feet. Just a little bit on the sides here. Now to you it's probably still going to look black. Maybe just a little bit on top of the ears. Maybe he's got a lighter collar, so we can add a light collar around there. Maybe his feet need to be a little bit lighter. Okay, now I'm going to move on to the boy. For the boy's head, Mainly just going to block it in with some black first. The majority of his head there. Now he's just going to have brown hair, and so I'm just going to use this lighter brown to go in here. I'm going to blend it in with some of that darker brown, black that's there. Now for the skin color, I'm just going to use some of these browns that I have and mix in a little bit of rose pink. That should tone it down just as much as I need here, because I had too much black on it still. He's got his ear there. His ears showing just a little bit there. Take a bit more of this brown. Added a little bit of the Naples Yellow to it. Just going to go in and fill in his legs right now while I have this color out. If it needs a little bit of a lighter bit to it, we're just going to add a little bit of lighter, take a little bit of darker brown, a little bit of pink in there still. Just don't want his legs to be totally one color, but I need, sure, we'll add a little bit of black to it and see what goes on here. Going to take a little bit of white to this, just to make a bit of some lighter highlights that I can add to the other side of his leg. Rinsing this one off. For the sweater, I may as well mix a little bit here. Maybe this is still wet. No, I'm going to take some of the Cerulean Blue, add a little bit of Payne's Gray to it, add some white, just a hint of this purple, and we'll use a bit more Payne's Gray over here. To make a darker shade that we can use as well. There we go. We got two shades for this hoodie now. We can do darker and lighter spots. So just add in wrinkles to the clothes with different shades of that same color. So now we're going to do the shorts. With the shorts, we're going to do the same idea. I'm just going to grab some of this deep green permanent though. And I'm going to mix some of this in with the color we were just using. Plus a little bit of white. Like a really deep green cargo short here. Alright, I'm going to move down into the shoes now. Just going to use black first. And just block them in a little bit. Maybe they got some white trim to them. I feel like with this one I went too far up, so I'm just going to cover it up with what looks like more highlights on the deck. And behind the dog, I'm going to take some really dark brown and just shade it in behind the dog. To show that it's a shadow behind him. Okay, once you feel like you got it, then you can go back at this time and fix anything that you feel like needs to be fixed. One thing that I feel like needs to be fixed on this, just need a dot of this. Just my sun isn't very white. So just wanted to add a little bit more of this in there. And then once you have that, you can go in and sign your painting. So I usually sign my painting with a color that I've been using throughout the painting so it doesn't stand out a huge amount. For down here, I'm actually just going to take some of this blue, some of this purple, add a little bit of white to it just to tone it down a little bit. And you can sign it in many different ways. I often just sign with my last name and the year. You can sign with your full name, you can sign with your initials, whatever you would like. Alright, after signing it and kind of doing it a look over again, I realized I did want to add a little bit of a shoreline on these closer trees. And that's really just going to help create that distance that we're going for. So for that, I'm going to use some raw umber. I'm going to use some Naples Yellow Hue. And I'm going to use some titanium white. So I'm just using a small angle brush here. And I'm just going to take some of that raw umber and just add a little bit of that. And I'm going to extend that out just a little bit. Now I'm going to take some of the Naples Yellow here. Take a bit of white, mix it in with that raw umber. And I'm going to dab some more of this in just to add a bit of texture to it. A bit more of this Naples Yellow. Okay, we'll go through the other side here as well. And if you really want to add a thin line for the shore back here, go ahead and do that as well. There we go. Just wipe this off here. Alright, now I think it's finished. But again, if you want to add anything different to it, feel free to make any other adjustments that you need. If you haven't checked out my other step-by-step acrylic painting tutorials, I really encourage you to do so. Leave comments of suggestions that you have for future tutorials that you would like to see. Thank you for watching this one. We'll see you next time here on Brian Sloan Artist.